All right, so one of the bigger questions that's been happening as of late is what the hell happened to this Washington football team defense? This was so good last season, and all of a sudden this year it's looking like not really that good at all. In fact, it's looking like a bad defense. And when you factor on that their offense is looking horrible as well, it's been one of the real disappointments. And what's gone wrong, right? Because last year it was so good. This year it's been very poor. What has the difference been? And I think it's fair to think about last year and say, okay, well, there were some signs potentially. Like their defense did have a bad day against Tampa Bay in the wild card game, but granted, Tampa Bay put up points against everybody, so it's hard to blame them too much. So I started watching film from this season, and I can clearly see what's gone wrong this season. Now, why didn't this stuff go wrong last year? That's kind of a bit more speculative, and I'm not exactly sure. I probably would have to really take a deep dive and go through every game from last year to figure that stuff out. But I can certainly pinpoint what's gone wrong this year. So let's talk about that, and let's jump into the film study to do so. So okay, right off the bat, something like this. One thing I should mention is that while we're talking about the Washington defense and how poor it's been this season, it's not like it's been poor all the way across the board. I mean, if you look at Pro Football Focus, they say their pass rush is the 4th best pass rush in football currently, but the reality is, if you can't cover, it just doesn't give time for your pass rushers to get there. People tend to only view defense as, well, if the pass rush gets there consistently, you won't have time to throw. And while that does happen, actually the contrary happens more, and there's a lot of data to back that up. But I've talked about that in previous videos. Let's focus on this play. So this is a zone coverage play. And honestly, this might have just been a straight up blown coverage. And this is what I've seen a lot of from Washington, which is shocking, quite frankly, because one thing I've noticed is that they are playing a bit more quarters, a bit more cover 2, as opposed to their typical cover 3. And it's possible that that shift has just kind of taken them a little bit longer to fully realize, their assignments. But still, Ron Rivera's zone defense is typically, they just know what to do. They know their assignment, which is why last season you saw, even though they didn't necessarily have the most talented players, they were always in position, which helped them. But once this play starts, watch how the corner is going to kind of, pass off a Buffalo player. And I just don't understand why he does this. It seems to me pretty clear that, you see how a linebacker moves up and blocks and covers the player in the flat. You got to stay deep right here. So I'm assuming he got the coverage wrong in his head and thought it was something else. But honestly, this should have been a touchdown. Now, Allen misses this throw, and partially because of the good pass rush. So, listen, pass rush saved you that time, but it's just not going to save you every time. There's going to be times when the offensive line, gets time. I mean, even on this play, they had about 2.5 seconds for Allen. He could have still maybe gotten that throw off. But regardless, that's just the kind of thing that Washington has really struggled in the coverage department. Something like this is interesting, where this is a good example, even though it's kind of a unique play that you don't really have to worry about too much. So you might be wondering, well, what's really unique about this? A one-on-one matchup towards the sideline, like this happens all the time. It's going to be a single safety deep coverage, even though they show 2 safeties deep. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is who those 2 players are. For one thing, Buffalo has a tight end out wide. And when you have a tight end out wide and it's man coverage, that means that it's not going to be a cornerback who's out there. It's going to be either a safety or, in this case, a linebacker. This is Cole Holcomb, who is fine. He's a fine player, but he's not like a star or anything, and he might be their best linebacker of the bunch. Jamon Davis, it was their first-round rookie, who's been fine, hasn't gotten a ton of playing time, but looked solid in it. John Bostic has been a mess so far, but this is a clear weakness of this team, and it's a weakness that teams are exploiting. Watch, Allen takes a snap, and this play is going to work. And again, you're going to say, well, okay, fine, whatever. That's a unique play. Who really cares in this specific situation how well you cover there? And I kind of agree, but I'm just using it as an example to paint a broader picture, which is their linebackers aren't covering well. And last year, teams didn't really take advantage of it as much, is what I'm guessing, because this year, teams are really taking advantage of it, and they're really struggling there. Look at how, so again, what's going to happen is that you're going to attack the linebackers. So over the middle of the field, just a quick route over the middle. It's nothing too crazy here. However, right when this play starts, so Jones takes the snap, and he's getting ready to fire it. And at this point, a good linebacker can knock this one away. I mean, this is a pretty similar situation to where Roquan Smith had that pick 6 against Joe Burrow this season. Like, that can happen. Now, it's not really, I'm not putting too much blame, like, to not get a pick 6, right? That seems outrageous. But it just kind of goes to show that the linebackers, they're not quite as good as other teams' linebackers in coverage, even when you're kind of in position. Jones throws it over to the side, and they're having success right there. And again, this is stuff you can learn. It's not like it's something that it's like they're just screwed. Like, they'll get better at this kind of stuff, especially when Washington's playing more two safety deep coverages. A little bit more space. Like this play, Chase Young dropped back into coverage. He was one of the quote-unquote linebackers. So him being in coverage, that kind of makes the gaps a little bit bigger. Maybe don't do that as much. Have Chase Young rush the passer. That's what he's known for. But like something like this is another good example. And quite frankly, it kind of makes me feel like, okay, let's stop putting linebackers on tight ends because it's not working out too well. Let's just cut this out altogether. Put an extra DB back there. Do what you got to do, which, again, it's tough when you're playing, this type of coverage. But really, go to a lot of a 4-3 look mostly, which they do a good chunk of. But, when you have a safety and two linebackers in the game, make sure a linebacker is one of the guys blitzing. If you want to blitz, have the safety cover a tight end or a halfback, depending on the matchup situation. Because look, Jones takes a snap and watch Bostic just get completely burned right there. I mean, that was just not good coverage whatsoever. So these coverage linebackers, this is the problem with a zone defense, is if you have one area where teams can attack, they're going to keep attacking it until you find a way to fix it. And last year, again, I don't know, I guess teams just didn't really attack that as much, but this year it's become a real issue and they're really struggling. Like, I'll show one more just for fun. There are other issues. It's not just this type of play, but it is this type of play a lot that it's hurt them in all 3 games at this point, which is why I wanted to show one from the Chargers game as well. Is, again, tight end trying to find a gap in coverage over the middle. And this is another one of those examples of just it's not even a skill thing. It's really no one picks him up. Watch, right when he gets past that middle area of the field, the guy who's supposed to pick him up does not pick him up right there. And this is cover 2, which is a pretty simple zone coverage play. One of the issues with like a cover 3, for example, is that there's only 4 players over the middle. There's 5 eligible receivers. So I'm a little more forgiving when you screw up there. In cover 2, you have 5 players over the middle with 5 eligible receivers. You should be able to make sure you end up with a guy on each guy. There shouldn't be that much separation right there against cover 2. It's easy to run the ball against cover 2, but that kind of stuff should be easy to defend. And that's not a skill thing. That's just Washington not really playing good defense, playing good team defense, which is the complete opposite of what we've become accustomed to expect from Ron Rivera. So yeah, I mean, listen, not a great first few weeks for Washington. Do I think they can improve? I do. Do I think they will improve? I do. I think they'll improve. I think that I trust Ron Rivera, and his teams do typically get better defensively towards the end of the season. That's a little bit why, if you remember that 15-1 season with the Carolina Panthers, where they went to the Super Bowl, it was a joke the entire way of them being called like the worst undefeated team ever, because they were like, I think they started like 13-0 or something like that. And teams kept saying, well, yeah, they're undefeated, but they're not that great. Well, they got better as the season went on as well. So that's kind of why people maybe had a false narrative in their head. And maybe it was partially true, at least a little. But regardless, still, I would say that it might be a little too late, too little too late. You're already 0-3. Obviously, losing your starting quarterback hurts, but you got to figure this stuff out, and you got to figure this stuff out in a hurry. And if you have to play a different coverage a little bit, do that. If you have to play man, play man. Like we saw Tampa Bay do that, right? Where Tampa Bay is like, we're not that great at zone. We're just going to play man coverage. That's what we're better at. Like, maybe just try new things. I know that Ron Rivera has coverages he likes to run, but if it's not working, you got to try some new stuff. So maybe you do that. But either way, been a very big disappointment through 3 weeks. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.